during interviews at the Abduction Study Conference held at MIT Cambridge, Massachusetts, June 13 to 17, 1992. Joe Stone of Carmen, Pg Clinical Psychology, mentions a small group of individuals claiming to be on a spiritual path and who did not wish to be part of the sampling group or to be publicly recognized. Pritchard. The beings they described were tall, ethereal light beings with somewhat translucent bodies. They each struggled to adequately describe the unconditional love and sense of acceptance they felt during their experiences. In many cases, it felt so overwhelming it became difficult to return to the reality of everyday living. Carmen, page 314. This backstage out of the limelight approach taken by this group claiming to see ethereal beings, etheric bodies, is a telltale sign of lifelong relationship with Jivatma-type extraterrestrials or Jivatma-Gray-type aliens. However, it is a grave error to mention spiritually in the same breath when talking about Jivatma or etheric body experiences. Although many Jivatma experiences are of a spiritual nature, when speaking of Jivatmas to an audience that has never had such an experience, the word spiritual or spirit is understood to be unreal, abstract, or imaginative. Contemporary language determinates have redefined this term spirit as something not a reality. The same problem arises when we discuss Sanskrit texts. Ancient authors knew no distinction between the reality of a human and the reality of spirit. Both entities in the context of Sanskrit texts are real phenomena with tangible bodies and texture to touch. At the same conference held at MIT, Richard Hall, chairman of the Fund for UFO Research, submitted an essay titled Are UFO Abductions a Universal or Culturally Dependent Phenomenon? Specific differences between Brazil and the U.S. and the content of abduction reports include an admixture of spirits, ritual, and the chapa phenomena, lights that chase people in sparsely populated areas trying to abduct them with alien activities. During the 1980s, the alien phenomenon was sometimes considered to be a part of spiritualism, as aliens were treated in the same way as spirits. Richard Hall, page 191. John E. Mack M.D. concluded the MIT Abduction Conference with a speech titled, We Can't Get There From Here. The following is a short excerpt from the same speech. Now, what is a worldview? We in the West have perhaps extended this view to other places that once had other world views and are still trying to hang on to them. It rests on two fundamental building blocks. First is dualism, which basically says we divide ourselves from everything else. We are here, you are there. Dualism stresses our separateness from everything else. Second is materialism, which presumes that all that really exists of the physical world is known to empirical science. All the rest, that which we know through music, poetry, and the ordinary state of consciousness, belongs to the spirit world, which we give less ontological weight. Johnny Mack received a well-deserved standing ovation for this concluding speech. He also defended himself politely to a question from the audience by stating, I don't mean to be disrespectful about meticulous, careful, empirical work. I value that enormously. What I really mean is that we expand epistemologies to value the intuitive, the transpersonal way of gaining knowledge. Contrary to Mack's wish to expand the field, epistemology is actually the study of thinking, not knowledge or knowing. To think about something is proof in itself that the thinker does not know. Therefore, the only true justified false belief is thinking, the very foundation of epistemology. Odell. This age-old epistic dilemma is an absurd notion that reason is a process or product of thinking. Contrary to everything scholars deem holy, reason is not the product of thought. Reason, or the logos, is a known, lost key example, Appendix A. Mack's gallant attempt to cross the minefield of linguistic determinants by using determinants such as the transpersonal way of gaining knowledge probably did get the proper attention needed, but it is not likely anyone in the audience or Mack understood the term transpersonal. Transpersonal is best defined as anything outside of yourself, including yourself. Within the last 50 years, the term transpersonal superseded yesterday's word of choice, transcendental, when describing the spiritual world. Over time, By way of anthropomorphism, the meaning of transcendental changed into a spatial definition, like a trip from Texas to Alaska. Language, any language, has a tendency to migrate to the complex away from the truth. Mack's attempt to bridge the gap between scientists and the spiritual domain actually alienated the two universes of thought. The point is, materialists as well as immaterialists both argue for the same reality, be it called matter or mind. Most importantly, when we talk about Jivma, gray type of aliens, we are talking about real, tangible bodies that can be seen and felt by touch. Father John E. Mack responds to the audience. Many abductees in the regression will tell you they have the sense of multiple space-time dimensions, different dimensions collapsing into their consciousness. We don't have language to express that. Page 567. Mack's response to the audience has a lot of weight, but it is not impossible to talk about multidimensional planes, especially if you address the subject as real in the first place. After a careful study of alien discussion proceedings of the abduction study, it is my conclusion that the researchers were of the highest caliber. However, few, if any, have ever experienced an alien encounter or at the time were unable to recall such experience. The whole conference, advertised as objective scientific discovery, in reality was a mental illness case study for those that believe that they have encountered or were abducted by aliens. The conference attracted thousands of profiles for a mass case sampling at the expense of troubled souls trying to find answers to natural phenomena that actually did take place in their lives. Yes, the small Ethereal group interviewed by Joe Stone, Carmen, Ph.D., clinical psychology, was wise to keep their own experience to a whisper. Profound consequences await those that have had experience with Jivmas, and the memories of such have been diluted by linguistic determinants associated with Hollywood grays.